In this devotional, I'm going to share with you three thoughts from Luke chapter 14, verses 25 through 33, where I'll ask the question, what does following Jesus cost? Luke chapter 14, verses 25 through 33 says, "Now great crowds accompanied him, and he turned and said to them, 'If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, This man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king, going out to encounter another king in war, will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet who comes against him with 20,000? And if not, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore, any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple." Jesus is doing something that you might not expect. He is talking to the crowds of people who are following him, and he's discouraging them. He's saying, don't follow me if you aren't all the way in. Don't follow me if you aren't able to give up everything in order to follow me devoutly. Don't think that you can follow me as like a hobby or just like a personality trait or something like that. No, Jesus demands wholehearted devotion in order to be his disciple. And this is what he tells the crowds who are with him. He is letting them know that if they are to follow him, they must be willing to give up everything in order to do so. With this in mind, here are three thoughts from Luke chapter 14, verses 25 through 33, answering the question, what does following Jesus cost? Thought number one, relationships. Jesus says that you have to be willing to abandon your father, your mother, your sister, your brother, your husband, your wife, any of the closest relationships that you might have. You have to be willing to sacrifice them in order to follow Jesus. You have to be willing to follow him instead of your own parents. And this is something that a lot of people don't really think about or consider when they hear the gospel message, that Jesus demands wholehearted fidelity, even greater than that which is found within the family. So you have to be willing to give up your relationships, the closest relationships that you have, in order to follow Jesus. Thought number two, life. Jesus says very clearly that you must be willing to take up your cross to follow him. And taking up your cross means that you are willing to go to your own death in order to follow him. You have to be willing to die for him. And what's amazing is that even when he's saying this, there are people in the crowd who will die for him. There are people in the crowd listening to what he says that ultimately will be martyred for the faith. There are people who will give up their lives in order to follow Jesus. And this is something that he has told them from the beginning. You have to be willing to do. This is the level of devotion that Jesus demands. You must be willing to sacrifice everything. No matter what the relationship is, no matter if it costs you your life, you have to be willing to give it up. You can hold nothing back. He demands you be willing to sacrifice it all. Thought number three, everything. Jesus demands that there is nothing held back, that there is nothing that is not offered up in sacrifice to follow him. To follow Jesus, you have to be willing to give up everything and anything that might hold back your devotion. And this is the cost of following Jesus. He demands fidelity to the extreme, to where you are not willing to take anything as payment for him. That all things are sacrificed in order to follow him. And this is one of the messages that gets watered down a whole lot in Christianity these days, where people aren't telling you that, yes, you can follow Jesus, but you have to sacrifice everything that you have, every single thing. You have to be willing to let it all go. You have to be able to say that if it means sacrificing my family, I will follow Christ. If it means giving up all of my personal possessions, I will follow Christ. If it means that I have to die, I will follow Christ. And that's the level of devotion that he demands. How often do you hear people talking about that these days? You might hear people give it lip service, but The fact of the matter is that there are people in the world today who are being martyred for their faith, as there are people elsewhere in the world today who have such easy believism that it doesn't even matter if they devote themselves to Christ at all, they still can wear the moniker of Christian. Well, that shouldn't be the case. What should be the case, very simply, is this, that Christian people are willing to sacrifice everything. They're willing to give everything up in order to follow Christ, that nothing is held back, that if it's demanded of them, they will give it and give it freely. That's what it costs to follow Jesus. It costs everything. And unless you're willing to give everything up, you should seriously consider whether or not you will call yourself a Christian. These three thoughts come from the assigned reading of Luke chapters 13 and 14. If you'd like to read through the Bible with me, you can do so by subscribing to this channel, by clicking on the link in the description, or by joining the Facebook group Through the Bible, where we are reading the text of Scripture together.